Hello, good afternoon, good morning. On behalf of the Wilson Center, I'd like to welcome everyone to a very special panel discussion on Antarctic diplomacy. My name is Evan Bloom, and I'm a senior fellow here at the Wilson Center. Germany will be the host of the annual Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting next week in Berlin, and this will be the first one held in person in 2 years. Indeed, it will be a hybrid event, by contrast with last year's hosted by France as a virtual event. So we have a really terrific panel today, including the chair of the meeting, leading heads of delegation, as well as the chair of the Committee for Environmental Protection, which advises the ATCM. I'm the former head of the US delegation to the two main Antarctic diplomatic bodies, the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting and CAMLR, the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. And my goal in setting up this panel was to bring together senior officials who can explain what is going on at this important moment on the annual Antarctic diplomatic calendar. Well, first, let me provide some background. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 calls for regular meetings of the consultative parties, which are now held annually. Those annual meetings are hosted in turn by different consultative parties. So this is the first time in 2 years that the Antarctic Treaty parties will have a chance to discuss governance of Antarctica in person. They will discuss issues like tourism, operation of research stations, conduct of science, environmental protection, etc. The ATCM will also be one of the first meetings of multilateral bodies since the start of the Ukraine conflict, where Russia and Ukraine are both participants, in this case, consultative parties. We will see if our panelists have any thoughts on whether the war in Ukraine will have an impact on these proceedings. So just a word about Antarctic policy and governance. The Antarctic Treaty and its meetings are one part of what is called the Antarctic Treaty System. In addition, a key part of the Antarctic Treaty System is CAMLR, which handles marine conservation and fisheries management, but also establishment of marine protected areas, which is an Antarctic policy issue that receives a lot of attention. The CAMLR Commission meets every year in Hobart, Tasmania, at the end of October. Thus, the ATCM later this month and CAMLR in October are the two key Antarctic meetings each year. So we have just the right people to tell us about what to expect at the upcoming ATCM. Representing Germany as the host of the conference, and indeed the chair of the conference itself, is Mrs. Tanja von Uslar-Gleichen. She can tell us about Germany's objectives for this ATCM. In addition, we have officials who are each leaders in their country's Antarctic foreign policies. First, we will hear from Ms. von Uslar, then in turn from Ambassador Lopez-Crozet, Mr. McCarthy, Ms. Walter, and Ms. Njastad. After they have spoken, I will pose some questions for discussion. And finally, we hope to have some time during this 1-hour event for questions from the audience that are sent to us via email. Now, usually we have a general email address, but in this case, we're having some email difficulties. So I'll ask you to send any email questions you have to jack.durkee, jack.durkee @wilsoncenter.org, jackdurkee@wilsoncenter.org, and he'll send those to me. The speakers' full bios are on our website, but just to mention briefly, Ms. von Uslar has been appointed by the German government as chair of this year's ATCM. She is director of international law in the legal department at the German Foreign Office. Ambassador Fausto Mariano Lopez-Crozet is the national director for Antarctic foreign policy in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Argentina. He is the head of the Argentine delegation to the ATCM and Argentina's CAMLR commissioner. He's a career diplomat and was Argentina's ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa from 2016 to 2020. Mr. David McCarthy is Chief Legal Officer and First Assistant Secretary in the Legal Division at the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. He has held many senior diplomatic positions, including as Australia's High Commissioner to South Africa. Ms. Miriam Walter is head of Division for the Law of the Sea, Antarctica, and Aerospace Law at the German Foreign Office, and she is the head of the German delegation to the ATCM. And Ms. Birgit Njestad leads the Antarctic program at the Norwegian Polar Institute in Tromsø, Norway. She is the chair of the Committee for Environmental Protection. So again, if you have questions for the panelists, please send them to jackdurkee, DURKEE at wilsoncenter.org. And I want to thank Jack for his help in putting together this program, and as well as our audiovisual colleagues here at the Wilson Center. So with that, let's begin. Mrs. van Oostelaar, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan, and thank you very much to you and the Wilson Center for taking the initiative to set up this video Zoom conference. It's a great opportunity for me and my colleague Miriam to meet all of you ahead of the start of the ATCM next week. For Germany, it's a great honor to be hosting the ATCM and the CEP in Berlin from the 23rd of May to the 2nd of June. And we see this opportunity as an occasion to underscore the importance of peaceful multilateral cooperation, which is more important now than ever. Evan, you already mentioned that the Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1959, that is at the height of the Cold War. And it was amazing at the time that the states were actually able to agree to use Antarctica exclusively for peaceful purposes. And this peaceful use has continued ever since. A military confrontation over unclarified territorial claims in Antarctica was avoided and has been avoided ever since as well. So thanks to the treaty, Antarctica remains demilitarized as a continent and free of nuclear weapons. It is Germany's strong wish and aim to maintain the values of the Antarctic Treaty System. And by hosting this conference, even in these difficult times, and Evan, you already referred to it, when one treaty partner wages a war of aggression against another, Germany wants to show its responsibility for the unique ecosystem of the Antarctica. And we are very thankful that in all the talks we've had in the past few weeks, we feel and felt the strong support of treaty partners for this course of action. It is fortunately possible to hold this conference as an in-presence conference with hybrid elements, which is the challenge, but I think we all know that post-pandemic, we have other expectations as participating states to international conferences than before COVID. So that is something we want to offer to make it possible for all countries to participate. It will be a great opportunity, I hope, nevertheless, for those experts who are able to travel to Berlin to meet again in person after 2 years of only virtual contact, and to have a meeting with a full agenda. What do we hope to achieve in this conference? Well, we hope that this ATCM will send a strong message of cooperation in light of serious challenges to the Antarctic ecosystem. We need to counteract the effects of climate change in Antarctica, which we all feel globally. As we like to say, what starts in Antarctica will affect us all. It will not stay in Antarctica. We secondly have to protect Antarctic biodiversity, which very much includes establishing a network of protected areas in order to safeguard the natural habitat of many species. Third, we want to advance science and research together. And fourth, to assist finding a regime for sustainable tourism in the Antarctic region, now that post-pandemic travel again is likely to gain momentum. This conference, I would like to add, also in light of the geopolitical situation, is going to be a working meeting only. So we're forgoing many of the social events which usually accompany ATCM and CEP. But we want to achieve results to benefit Antarctica, and we expect all participating parties to support this effort. As you know, our motto for the conference is from science via policy to protection, and this is what we want to achieve and what we want to deliver. So thank you very much for your support. Over to you, Evan.
Thank you very much for those opening comments. So next, I'd like to call on Ambassador Lopez-Crozet. Fausto, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Evan. And I want to thank you and the Wilson Center for this opportunity. Well, we are too close now to a new ATCM. And as you and Tanya said, this will be, and we are happy for that, this will be, again, we are back to an in-person meeting. So I think that this is the first remark I would say, first thing I would say, because the virtual modality allowed us to give some continuity to our work during the pandemic. But we believe, or yet we believe, that it is essential for us to meet personally. So have face-to-face exchanges, on the margin meetings, meetings during the coffee breaks, or extra long sessions. You need to work face-to-face, and that will help mutual understanding on the one hand, and also will be really helpful for building consensus, something that has been our kind of a trademark during these 60 years. So we think it will be more than important to have this face-to-face meeting. So we would like to thank Germany for the effort in organizing this meeting. I did have the experience of helping in organize our meeting ATCM in 2011, and to organize a meeting for hundreds of people is a real challenge. But the circumstances now, with the pandemic and the situation in Europe, well, it's a much more challenging situation. So thank you, Germany, for this. And I would like to say something else, that there is one innovative element in this ATCM particularly. So we are going to meet in person, but others will have the opportunity to attend this meeting virtually. So on the one hand, we are in a way helping towards curbing our carbon footprint with not so many people traveling, but we are having the chance to add some value and some good advice from our experts that are not traveling to the meeting, but are attending the meeting. So we think this will help our discussions, this will enrich our discussions, and we hope that if this experience goes well, then we can have this kind of hybrid meeting. We think that is something, there's a lot of value on having our experts, even not at the place, but participating in the meeting. So we think it's something innovative, and we again thanks Germany for this. And if this works okay, we could just use this in the future, not just in the ATCMs, but maybe in CAMELAR or other fora. So that's important. And another area, well, you know, all our scientific activities have been affected by the pandemic. We have 13 stations there in Antarctica, and a lot of scientific programs in international cooperation. So this ATCM will give us an important opportunity to exchange experiences and lessons learned by how our programs deal with that, and some good lessons also for the future. Then another important issue that we consider is Antarctic tourism. As you know, we have Ushuaia as the closest gateway to Antarctica, and Ushuaia is a city in which more than 90% of ship-based tourism used to go to Antarctica. So we think that we have to keep on having our discussions in tourism. We support tourism as long as it is sustainable, as it is responsible, and it is in a way, it follows the rules that we are making. And in order to make all that rules, we need to keep adding work and experience. That's why we are, since a long time ago, preparing papers with all the numbers and trends of tourism going from Ushuaia to Antarctica. It is a long tradition, so we are presenting those papers since a long time ago. We think that the best decisions are taken with the best information available. So we need to have that information. And that's what we are trying to work together with other parties in order to keep working with Antarctic tourism. Well, we have Birgit here, and well, fulfilling all our obligation of environmental protection and tackling the effects of climate change are more than important too. So we've been working together with other parties during the intersessional period. We've been involved in ICGs, and we hope to keep on working. There's a lot of job, and it's a big challenge for Birgit and all of us in the CEP, but it is good to meet again in person. And well, just like as a closing remark, I will back to what I said at the very beginning. This ATCM is giving us the opportunity to reaffirm multilateral dialogue, to reaffirm the principles of the Antarctic Treaty. Tanya has been talking about that. And I hope that as the Antarctic Treaty system overcome numerous challenges over these 60 years, we could keep on going with that and try to, with a spirit of a good faith and taking into account those principles, get to consensus-based decisions that could keep or improve the situation of the Antarctic Treaty System. So that's the spirit in which we are going to this meeting, and we hope this in-person meeting will, at the end, we will be more optimistic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fausto. Good points about how this will be first real hybrid meeting for the treaty system, and so that will be quite a challenge. But I believe if any country can pull that off well, it would be Germany. So let me turn next to David McCarthy. Thank you for coming to us in the middle of the night from Canberra. We appreciate it. David, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan, and apologies for the casual close, but it is 20 past midnight here. It's Adam McCarthy, by the way, Evan. Just wanted to say thank you and to the Wilson Centre for hosting this dialogue. It's obviously a terrific opportunity to discuss the current state of Antarctica and the Antarctic Treaty System and reflect on what has changed and where we are going. I'd particularly like to extend my thanks to our colleagues from Germany and the hosts of this year's ATCM, obviously Tanya and Miriam, a very large vielen Dank and Dankeschön for the excellent arrangements that have been put in place, and for all of the work that I think you've done to sort of accommodate the additional layers of complexity that are added to international meetings in this time of COVID. This will certainly be the first major multilateral negotiation I've done since the start of COVID. So it'll be great to be on the road again, but also, thank you for everything you've done to sort of put it together under these conditions. France did a very good job of hosting last year's meeting, but again, I just think it's a relief that we can return once again to face-to-face meetings and what that offers. Obviously, Australia has a very rich Antarctic history. Hobart is a key gateway to the east of the continent. We played a very significant role in the negotiations that led to the treaty in 1959. And obviously, we were also very integral in the negotiation of the Madrid Protocol. That's by way of saying that Antarctica really matters to Australia. And we're very much committed to maintaining a leading and influential role in international Antarctic affairs. With that in mind, I should add, we've just announced our Australian Antarctic Strategy and 20-year action plan, and it is a historic step up in terms of our funding and resources for Antarctica. Obviously, our priorities will be maintaining Antarctica's freedom from strategic and or political confrontation, and supporting a very strong treaty system, but also conducting world-class scientific research and protecting the Antarctic environment. Very excitedly, in December 2021, we launched our new icebreaker, the RSV Norwegia, which, in case you're wondering, is an Indigenous Australian word. It's basically the word from the local Indigenous community for Southern Lights. So it's a nice follow-on from the fact that our previous icebreaker was, of course, the Aurora Australis. It's the biggest single investment in the history of the Australian Antarctic program, with $1.9 billion covering the design, build, and 30-year operational and maintenance lifespan of the icebreaker. It's world-class, it's cutting edge, and it will help, no doubt, all of us to build our understanding of the region through scientific research. So we'll be talking in Berlin about both the Norwegia and also about other aspects of our very significant step up. It's a massive investment in our Antarctic program, 804 million Australian dollars over the next 10 years. And it includes a very significant expansion of our scientific and logistical capability, which will enhance both our knowledge of and also our ability to protect the region. We're very pleased that climate change will be the focus of this year's ATCM, and we greatly welcome the work of the Scientific Committee, the SCAR, including the working papers on Antarctic climate change and the environment. This is absolutely vital work. If I can just pick up on your request, Evan, quickly to talk about Russia and Ukraine. It's obviously a very difficult time for the treaty system, although we continue to think that it maintains and provides a very effective framework for states to work together in the Antarctic. Invasion of Ukraine will, I think, quite unique challenges for the treaty system. As we all know, a hallmark of the treaty system is it has remained largely removed from geopolitics throughout its lifetime. Having said that, a consultative party has invaded another treaty party, and we can't just ignore that. In the rules-based order, if you like, the Antarctic Treaty System is one of the branches of that rules-based order, but Russia has effectively taken an axe to the trunk and no part of that order can exist in isolation from what is going on. We've condemned the violation. It's a gross violation of international law. We also acknowledge that Ukraine has submitted an information paper detailing the challenges faced by its national Antarctic program in the context of the current invasion. We, of course, strongly support Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The challenge, I think, for Australia, for our hosts and for all the other participants will be to find a way that both acknowledges what is going on that we can't ignore, while also allowing the treaty system to do what it continues to do so well, which is, for the most part, leave global politics north of 60 degrees, basically. And maybe I'll end up on that, but very much looking forward to seeing everyone in Berlin next week. And a glass of Weiss beer will be my first order of the day after I step off my 24 hours flight.
Adam, thank you very much for your comments. And so let me then go to Miriam. I think you're next for the German delegation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Evan, for setting this up. And also thank you to Fausto and Adam for the encouraging words. I think we can meet them now in this phase of the last preparations for next week. I especially thank you, Fausto, for your words on the advantages of a hybrid meeting. That's exactly what we think. It maybe is a way for the future that makes conferences more sustainable and also more accessible, as you said, for experts who maybe can't travel. And so I think it's a really good opportunity. I mean, we're really looking forward to giving people the chance to meet physically. That's of course, what we need right now, that we have this exchange from face to face, but it's also good that we have this additional opportunity for people to participate virtually. Of course, Evan's words raised the pressure a little bit, saying that Germany should be a country that organizes this perfectly. So I don't know, we will see, but I think there will also be a lot of understanding. We're the first ones in the ATCM to organize this this way. And if we should face minor problems, I think the main advantage is that we meet again and have the chance to discuss. So yeah, our priorities, I mean, I don't want to echo what Tanja von Uslar already said, but maybe I could go a little bit more into detail as well. Of course, climate change is one of the priorities, addressing the threat of global climate change that affects Antarctica and thereby also global climate change again. So we'll be discussing at the ATCM a major update of earlier research outcomes, which will be presented by the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research, SCAR. And of course, this was SCAR's decision, but we very much welcome the decision that the traditional lecture by SCAR will be presented by Professor Hans Otto Pörtner from the Alfred Wegener Institute. This will be placed on the very first day, the opening day. So I think this will also set the tone a little bit for the meeting so that we can convey the urgent message regarding climate change to all the treaty parties and work on that from there. Then, of course, the next priority is to enhance protection and species in Antarctica. Here, I would like to highlight our special focus on the emperor penguin. As we all know, this world's largest penguin is not only something of a mascot for Antarctica itself, but sadly also a symbol of the effects of climate change. And so in the long term, we would really like for this species to be put under the special protection of the Protocol on Environmental Protection. Of course, it will not be easy looking at the papers that have been presented to the meeting. But at least I think we can discuss it, we can present research and take some steps in the right direction in this regard. What else? Yeah, Tanya already named that we have a motto, from science via policy to protection. In fact, we will show an exhibition in the margins of the conference. And this motto is meant to stress that research is really important so that politicians know which decisions are the right ones in order to protect Antarctica. Yeah, this is important, and we would like to stress this importance of the precautionary principle that enables decision makers to adopt precautionary measures when scientific evidence about an environmental hazard is uncertain and the stakes are high. Then we must act according to that principle. So that's important. Yeah, and then the last priority that Tanya mentioned was sustainable management of tourism, also a very important subject. And we have been working on this. Germany has been working on this together with partners for a long time. And this year we submitted a working paper on tourism monitoring, departing from the fact that the overall impacts of human activities in the Antarctic are still too poorly understood, and that we have to have also more research results on this in order to have more material to take a strategic approach on tourism. And we also invite for a workshop on tourism monitoring in the weekend between the two working weeks. And I think many people have signed up, and this also underlines what also has already been said, that this is a good opportunity to meet again, to have workshops and informal meetings as well on the side. So even if we don't have very festive moments, as Tanya already pointed out, we will have the chance to have informal meetings and consultations. So I think this will be a great moment, and we are really looking forward to that. So with this, I will end maybe and hand over to Birgit, I think.
So Miriam, thank you very much, and thanks for your focus on the environmental and climate change issues, and hopefully we'll have a bit of time to delve even more deeply into some of those. And so next, I'd like to ask Birgit Nystad. She is one of the great stars of the Antarctic Treaty diplomacy, and especially the right person to talk to us about environmental issues. So Birgit, please.
Thank you very much, Evan, and thank you also to Wilson Center for organizing this. If you don't mind, I'm just going to have a few slides back behind me. It's more pretty to look at on than me. So just maybe give me 2 seconds and we'll see if we can get that to work. So you can see this? Yeah, good. So I just wanted to give a couple of points on background first, just to remind ourselves on the Committee for Environmental Protection, which I'm coming as a chair from into this this conference here now. So 30 years ago, the parties to the Antarctic Treaty adopted a protocol under the Antarctic Treaty where they committed themselves to this comprehensive protection of the Antarctic environment. And I think I could talk a lot about the protocol itself, but I think it's fair to say that the protocol really has shaped the governance discussions of the Antarctic Treaty consultative meetings since 1998 when, or 1991 when it was adopted. And I think we already heard that from the previous speakers. Everybody is quite focusing on the environmental issues. So this is the background for that. The aim of the protocol is, of course, the comprehensive protection. The principle is that activities are to be conducted in a manner that they don't harm or damage the Antarctic environment. And again, this is a lecture in itself. We should go into the details of that, but it's just good to have in the background because this is sort of the framing of the discussions of the Committee for Environmental Protection. So I'll leave it at that and then go into noting that the protocol establishes a committee for environmental protection, or the CEP, which I'll probably say the rest of this commentary. The CEP, or rather, all parties that have ratified the environmental protocol are members of the CEP, and currently the CEP has 42 members compared to the 28 or 29, sorry, consultative parties of the Antarctic Treaty. The committee meets normally in conjunction with the ATCMs or the treaty meetings, and therefore the committee is meeting, having its 24th meeting in Berlin next week. And we are also extremely happy that we're meeting physically, and we are extremely excited about the framing of the conference that Germany has been providing, or already seeming to provide. So we're looking forward to that and all the opportunities that will create. During the 30 years of the committee's work, the committee has really built a considerable body of work, including the elaboration of numerous practical environmental management tools for the treaty parties' consideration. But what are the issues that currently I should say, of course, that the committee's role is to advise the treaty parties on the implementation of the environmental protocol and on the state of the Antarctic environment. That's a short version of the role of the committee. But what are the key issues that we are facing currently, also at this year's meeting? It really is a bit hard to cover it all. I think we have 100 papers in front of us, and during the next week we'll be busy. But I think it's probably possible to say that our discussions revolve around maybe three main topics, which I'll just very briefly point to here. One has been mentioned by, I think, all the other members of this panel, climate change. It is true that climate change, and specifically the anthropogenic part of it, is caused outside of Antarctica. But it does impact both Antarctic, but also the impacts in Antarctica, again, of course, impacts the global system. But it does impact the Antarctic environment itself. And it is our role to protect the Antarctic environment. And therefore, we need to look at mechanisms and tools and ways to see if we can build resilience to the Antarctic environment to this climate change. So many of our discussions revolve in one way or the other around these issues, like the question of introduction of non-native species, which has other elements than just climate, but a warming climate can enable non-native or introduced species to settle better than they did before. We have species at risk, and Miriam mentioned the emperor penguin, which will be focus of the discussions at this year's meeting. There are probably other species we'll be talking about in the future. This year it is the emperor penguin. We will be talking about habitats at risk, especially through Antarctic specially protected areas. That's one of the tools of handling both finding sort of refuge areas for climate change purposes, and also, of course, to protect species through habitat changes, protection. And also, of course, discussions relating to the ecosystem and climate change as a whole. So climate change is a key topic in many of our discussions in one way or the other. I think also human presence has been talked about, especially many of you have mentioned tourism, and that's one of the aspects of human presence in Antarctica. We are seeing that we have more new types of activities in new areas, and diversifying human activities. So that is also one of the issues that is on our agenda, is to ensure that we have tools and protocols that enable us to again make Antarctica, I guess, robust against these increasing activities. Looking at everything from how presence is a littering possibility, but also to disturbance to the animals, as we see in the picture in the middle, and also simply that we are a decreasing area that has been untouched by humans and thereby wilderness. So there is a whole span of issues, and most of these are on the agenda of this year's meeting. Then I think the third issue that I would like to note that our committee will be concentrating on is the knowledge base or the science base for the advice that we give. And I think that has also been touched upon, and certainly a German motto for the meeting is very much in line on that. We will be talking about where are the environmental values, how are the environmental values changing, and what are the new emerging environmental challenges on the horizon, such as contaminants and plastics and so on, as the last picture here shows a little bit from. And I think then 5 minutes, of course, way too short to bring it all up, the 100 papers and all the issues, but that kind of covers the bigger picture of what we are going to have to prioritize in the meeting in the coming week. And our main effort is, of course, to continue to provide the parties with the best possible technical, environmental, and scientific advice on matters that are relevant for the governance discussions that the treaty parties are having. So with that, I think I'll stop here, and I'm sure the discussions will bring up other issues. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much indeed. That's a very helpful introduction to the work of this year's CEP. So if I may, I'd like to start with a quick focus on an issue that it's already come up. I think there will be many in the audience that wish to have a deeper understanding of the possible implications of the war in Ukraine on the upcoming meeting. And I thank Adam for providing his comments in some detail already. But I wondered if there were any other thoughts on how whether there would be implications of the conflict in terms of how the meeting might operate. So maybe start with Fausto. Do you have any expectations along those regards?
Thank you, Evan, for an easy question. And well, you know that following what Adam said, we think that we need to get some balance on this. We know that we cannot have a meeting pretending that nothing happened. And also we do have that information paper from Ukraine. And I think that Ukraine has the right to present that info paper and explain the situations, their situation. And then I think that all of us could express our position regarding that. Express our position, condemning the invasion as we did, so we can do that. I think it is at the plenary at the very beginning, but we need to keep a balance and try to. We have, as Birgit explained, we have in working group 1, working group 2, and the CEP a lot of work to do. So it is important to not just pretend that nothing happened, so just to deal with this, but then try to do our job, to go to our business and keep things going. So my idea is I know that this is not easy, but try to keep a balance with that. I don't know if I've been clear. Thank you.
Oh, so thank you so much. And so to our German colleagues, Tanya and Miriam, do you have any particular thoughts on how this may affect the operation of the meeting?
Oh, thank you, Evan. I think we need to be very clear that the geopolitical situation we find in ourselves in at the moment is something we cannot ignore this time. While the Antarctic Treaty System is a system of its own, it's a joint governance of a continent without any national jurisdiction. We need to acknowledge that something is happening currently which affects not only two parties of the Antarctic Treaty, but all of us. And it forces us to take position because especially in the environment of the Antarctic Treaty, we stand for a rules-based order. We stand for multilateralism, and those are that's the common understanding, the basis of our work together, which has brought or protected Antarctica for so many decades. So we need to address this. And we must also be aware that this situation could also paralyze our meeting, which is, in my opinion, something which I don't want to call it worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is what is currently happening in Ukraine, but it is something which could happen. All of us, we are committed to using this opportunity of the conference of our meeting to advance the issues for the benefit of Antarctica. And I also expect that of our Russian colleagues and participants in this conference. And I very much hope that they will not go into fundamental opposition in light of the fact that we will be addressing their unlawful war of aggression against Ukraine, and we will be addressing this in no unclear unclear terms. So I hope I can rely on the support of all of you if we face a situation where we are in a stalemate, but I think we need to tackle this as we see the events developing. What I greatly appreciate is the cooperation and support of the Ukrainian delegates, which have said that they will be participating, and by presenting their paper, we will have the possibility as a team, as a conference, to address the situation and make our point. And I hope that beyond that, we will also find the opportunity of serving our joint, of living our responsibility for the joint governance of Antarctica.
Thank you very much indeed. Adam, is there anything you wanted to add on in that context?
No, I think Tanya has sort of said it all very clearly. I guess the only other thing to say is that my delegation, as I'm sure all other delegations, will be very much wanting to work with the hosts. At the end of the day, we're very sort of cognizant of the fact that, Germany as host will want to have a successful meeting with positive outcomes, but also, as Tanya and others have said, we can't sweep this under the table. We all believe fundamental principles of the system, including in particular that you kind of leave politics for the most part at the 60th. But as a colleague said, unfortunately, Antarctica doesn't get to live on a different planet from the rest of us. And as a critical part of the rules-based order, the treaty system has to respond to what is the most flagrant breach of that order for a long time. So, we'll be sending a very clear message, and we hope to be able to do that in a way that registers the message, but then two, allows the meeting to get on with its very important work in other areas.
So thank you very much indeed. So we have a little less than 8 minutes left and some other topics perhaps to get to. So I wonder if I could turn to the subject of tourism, which a number of you mentioned. So I wonder if we could talk a bit about the particular areas of tourism that the meeting might be focusing on. If you have any thoughts on whether the level of regulation of tourism at this point in Antarctica is adequate, and indeed, should there be concerns about the levels of tourism that may come post-pandemic. So would one of you like to respond to that? Fausto?
No, Miriam, please, you go.
Miriam.
Yes, thank you. No, I would just like to comment on the question whether there is enough, whether there are enough rules in place. I think that, as I already said, of course, we have to know more about the impacts of human activities, and therefore monitor what is going on. But of course, this reconnects also to the precautionary principle that I mentioned earlier. We can already imagine that impacts will be there and will be strong, and we already see them. So I really think we should use the opportunity that we meet again to talk about also the strategic work of ATCM, which steps we have to take in this and in the next meetings in order to advance this subject. So we really need a strategic approach, of which the tourism workshop on the monitoring project that I mentioned will be a first step, and other parties I know will also want to talk about it, to take this further to the next meetings in Finland next year. I think that in the future there, I mean, we already have some rules, we have the guidelines for visitors, but I think targeted regulations for tourist activities in general are still lacking or are under developed, so to speak. So I think we have to work on that really, because now we have had the COVID-19 pause, but we can really imagine that there will be a sharp rise in interest around the world in Antarctic activities. So we really have to act. Thank you.
Thank you. Birgit, do you have any thoughts from the CEP perspective on the work you may be doing related to tourism?
Yes, thank you. Although I think maybe Miriam has already said the most important things from the CEP perspective as well. The issue of understanding the impacts of tourism, not only assuming impacts, neither the negative nor the positive direction, is a challenge that has been on the table many times and will be on the table again this year. And there are some very good initiatives that's been pointed to on the side of the meeting as well that will be helpful. It doesn't take away from the fact that it is difficult to get a systematic and organized monitoring system in place to help us to get a better grip on the impacts. And that's something that we'll have to continue to discuss. Meanwhile, we can use the tools we do have from an environmental aspect and the implementation of the protocol aspect of things. There are a lot of principal questions in the tourism discussions as well, but site guidelines has been mentioned. We will be discussing site guidelines at this meeting. The protected areas system is another way of ensuring that valuable areas are kept out of tourists' reach, if I can use that. we are working on, although maybe not so much focus on this meeting, but on pre-assessing new types of activities so that we have an understanding of what kind of impacts these have. So there's a wide array of issues that relate to tourism and other human activities as well, of course, that are on the table of the CEP. So I think that gives us sort of an idea of the breadth of the discussions.
Thank you very much. And so Fausto, with Argentina as one of the key gateway states for shipborne tourism, I'm sure there will be a lot of activity in the hotels and restaurants in Ushuaia. Do you have anything more to add?
Yeah, well, after the pandemic, the numbers start to go up, and then concerns also start to go to up. But like Miriam and Birgit said, it is important. We think that there are some keys here. And well, first, information sharing, and also the improvement of the tools that we use for monitoring tourism, for monitoring impacts, and the idea of also monitoring cumulative impacts that could be key here. We've been contributing for several years to monitoring Antarctic tourism, so numbers, flows, trends, and what we think is that the more information we have, the better decisions we can take. So well, also post-visit reports, we've been working on that too. That is another important key element to take into account. So I think we need to keep on working together. This is not an issue that one country could go ahead alone. So we must work together on this. So that are my main points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Adam, any final tourism point?
Look, it's obviously something we follow closely. I guess it's not a central issue for Australia so much in the sense that obviously the part of Antarctica that is nearest and dearest and that we do most of our thinking about is East Antarctica, where tourism is just not an issue like it is on the peninsula, for instance. But, you know, we'll be following closely. And obviously there's a whole lot of debates, including about fixed dwellings that, you know, have the potential to be contentious.
Great. Thank you so much. So we don't have much time left, but all of you mentioned climate change one way or another. And I just wanted to give a final opportunity to provide some connection between the work of the ATCM and some objectives related to climate change policy. So if you have any thoughts, final thoughts about how climate change will be focused on at the meeting or what might be achieved, I'd welcome that. Any of you wish to focus on that, Birgit?
I can start us off again from the view of the Committee for Environmental Protection. Of course, again, this is an issue that really weaves itself through every issue on the table when it comes to sort of the management part of the issue. That makes it both, of course, important, but also extremely difficult in being very clear on what is achieved as climate achievements, if I can put it that way, because all our management actions have climate sensitivity in it by now. We are going to discuss, continue to discuss the implementation of a climate change response work plan that the CEP has. There's a lot of good actions being taken on many fronts, all from historic sites and monuments in a changing climate to the bigger questions of the full ecosystem. And I think we'll see progress on many of these issues, although I know also that we'll see some stumbling blocks on others, simply because it's a big and a challenging question to grasp, I guess. This doesn't really answer your question of achievements, but just to note that it is really an important central role or topic of everything that we do. And we are going to see good progress on some of those issues as we go from the CEP's side of things anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Birgit. Adam, you mentioned the importance of the working with the scientists in SCAR in the context of climate change. Is there anything you wanted to add in terms of Australia's ambitions at the meeting?
It will be, well, firstly, yes, we support the work. And in fact, I think as you'd be aware, climate change is an issue that's had some political attention in Australia, but we've always been strongly supportive of the work that is done on Antarctica. We have a election on Saturday, and we, like the United States, are a very vibrant democracy, and we don't know what the outcome will be. So I'm sure I'll be happy to talk about the Australian government's views on this next week when I know what the Australian government actually is. So, or who the Australian government is. So a topic for a vice peer or two in Berlin.
Great. Well, here's to having vibrant democracies. So we're over time. I wanted to give Tanya the opportunity for a last word. Could be on climate change or anything else, but let me just turn the floor over to you for just another minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to seeing all of you in Berlin. Last word on climate change, picking up on elections. As you know, we have a new government since October, end of September, October of last year. A government which also has strong stakes in the whole climate and environment issues. And so far as the Foreign Office goes, we have a new Secretary of State, which comes from an environmental and climate change background. And I'm very happy to announce that she will be on behalf of the Foreign Office opening the conference. She's not the only speaker, but she will be, from our point of view, the main speaker for the opening ceremony. So that's great news. And I think by the fact that she is the one to open on behalf of the Foreign Office, we're already signaling how important it is to focus on the dangers of climate change and to make sure that the Antarctic situation is taken into account, the threat to the Antarctic climate is taken into account, and the fact that what happens in the Antarctic so far as climate change is concerned will touch the entire globe. It's not something that will stay in the Antarctic, but have an effect on regions as far away as Europe. So I think the focus on climate change will become very clear from that point alone. And I hope that we will have all taken into consideration a successful conference next week. I know that I can rely on all of you as chair to support the conference, and we hope that it will be the first of many conferences which is with a successful hybrid model, which could then enable future conferences to also bring together with a smaller carbon footprint many experts for the benefit of the future of Antarctica and all of us. So that's my closing remarks, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you all on Monday.
Well, those are excellent closing remarks. Thank you all so much on behalf of the Wilson Center. Thank you for joining us, and good luck with the ATCM next week. Take care. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye. Bye, Evan.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. See you next week.